Awesome. You guys, I am so excited to be doing this. Um, those of you who don't know me, my name is Megan Thomas. And if you follow me on social media, all my stuff is called the Hippie Mama. And then I'm a life coach, but I call myself the wife coach. And so that's kind of how they found me, is to be a wife coach. I'm going to be talking to you about marriage today. And as I was thinking about marriage, there was a poem my kids and I found. I homeschool and we read a lot of poetry, and so we've gotten this really funny Mother Goose book. And a lot of really old poems were in there. And this was the one about marriage that I thought I would start with. It says, needles and pins, when a man marries, his troubles begin. I hope you think that's as funny as I thought it was. But it also, I wonder what inspired that poem, right? Like, we get married and we're so happy, and then we get married and all my troubles begin. So I'm going to be teaching you some skills so that you are not the cause of somebody else's troubles, right? I'm going to be sharing with you today how to take an okay, an average, or even a pretty good marriage, and I'm going to help you take it to the next level. I want you to have a rocking, awesome marriage. And before I start, I want to point out that there is no such thing as a perfect marriage. It doesn't exist, because you're taking two very imperfect humans and you're living in the same house together. And then you add on top of it raising children or bills to pay and commitments and all of these things that you need to do. And you're going to have some disagreements about how they should be done. So what I'm offering you are some tools that you can use so you don't make mountains out of molehills over every problem that shows up. So although no marriage is perfect, I'm hoping these tools will help you to have a lot more joy and peace in your relationship. This is also not something to create mom shame or guilt, to say you need to step it up, ladies, right? This is to empower you to just realize that you have the power to make your marriage as awesome as you want it to be, and hope that you can. So that is my goal today, is to empower you and not to create shame. So let's talk about love. Everybody wants to feel loved, everybody. And love is always an option. And in my opinion, love is always the best option. When we love, we feel great. And when we withhold love, we feel terrible. Did you realize the ability to unconditionally love someone is just a skill? And if it's a skill, that means everybody can learn how to do it. Now, obviously, with all skills, some things come more natural to one person than they do to others. But because it is a skill, anybody can acquire it. And so hopefully I can give you some tools, but you can go ahead and become awesome and unconditionally loving somebody. You can feel love for yourself and for your spouse no matter what. A lot of us love someone when they do what we want them to do, or we feel like they deserve it. But when someone does something that we consider wrong, don't use it as an excuse to withhold love, because it doesn't really affect them, it just affects you. So you may say that you want to feel angry or hurt, but why? Those feelings don't feel good. So love feels good, and I want to feel good. So remember, loving someone is a choice, and most of the time it is the best choice. So I was thinking a lot about coaches and everything like that. And if you've ever seen anyone trying to sell you a product, and this person, let's say they're trying to sell you weight loss, and they've never been overweight. It's kind of hard to buy what they're selling, because they don't really care. They don't know the struggle. They don't know how hard it's been. And so I wanted to let you know that I'm not coming from this place of perfection. Remember, perfection doesn't exist, right? But I didn't even see like this amazing example of my own parents of this awesome marriage. My parents actually divorced when I was quite young. And so a lot of the things I figured out, I had to research and study and watch, and to become great in this aspect of my life. So when I got married, I actually came with so much baggage, and I was a mess. My sweet husband thought he was just rescuing this damsel in distress, but really all he got was a distressed damsel. I actually made him my whipping boy, but not physically, emotionally. I gave him the burden of all my emotions, and every move he made, I made it mean how he feels about me. If he didn't help with the dishes the way I wanted them done, I made it mean that he didn't care about me. When we went to a very wise counselor who challenged my way of thinking, and I cried to this counselor and just told him, well, if my husband would just take the trash to the curb every week, then I know that he loves me. Counselor said, that's it, right? Trash to the curb and then you'll know he loves you. And I said, yes, that's all it is. And he goes, okay. So he told my husband, go ahead, take the trash to the curb every week. And then he told me that I would just find something else to be unsatisfied with or unhappy about. So weeks went by, my husband faithfully did it. And guess what? I found something else he did wrong. That stinking counselor was right. It was never about what my husband did or didn't do. It was all about me, and that I didn't know that my value was always the same, no matter what my husband does or doesn't do. Well, what do I do now? I just wanted to feel happy in my marriage, but I wanted my husband to make it happen. Honestly, he tried. Bless his heart, he tried. But no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't do it. So instead of trying to fix him so I could have a happy marriage, I decided to fix me. And that is what has made all the difference. So the first thing I needed to fix was my perception, because our perception creates our reality. Let me give you an example. Every year the carnival comes to town. And even though I'm older now and I get super nauseous, I love carnival rides. And the one year I had talked my son into going on a ride called Lucifer. And this ride kind of goes up like an oval and you're in this terrible little metal crate ball. And you swing forward and backward and the ride really gets going. You do a full circle and go all the way upside down. My son was absolutely terrified. He didn't think it was fun and he wanted to get off as soon as possible. I, however, was having a fantastic time. And the more scared he became, the funnier I thought the whole thing was. His perception was the ride was terrible and that he would never do it again. While my perception was, this is so fun. We each then created our own reality about the carnival ride. He saw it as the crate of death, and I saw it as fun and exciting. So in my marriage and all our marriages, our thoughts create our reality. We can both be in the same situation, and one person can love it and the other person can hate it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you turn a blind eye to destructive or abusive behavior, but to stop getting worked up over things that don't really matter in the long run. Let's say your spouse is late coming home from work, and your mind starts spinning with all sorts of negative thoughts like, well, if you really cared about me, he'd be home on time. And what could possibly be more important than spending time with your family? Then when he comes home, he's met by an angry wife that tells him how he is failing and is angry with him for being so inconsiderate. The reality you just created is a very unhappy home. If you can change your thoughts to something like, I wonder if traffic is really bad today, or I wonder if he's had a really long day. Then he comes home and he's met with an understanding wife that is just happy to see him. The reality that you created was a loving, peaceful home. Now, I'm not even going to get into the battle of whose day was harder, because I understand as moms, like being with kids isn't always the easiest thing. I have 7 kids and we're homeschooling and we're there all the time and there's chaos sometimes, right? But if I'm trying to one-up him or if he tries to one-up me of who had the harder day, it's not going to create the atmosphere of love that I want in my home. So I started changing my thoughts about my husband, and our whole marriage changed. When my thoughts started changing, I realized my thoughts have so much control in our marriage. And if I want this amazing marriage, then I have the power to make it happen. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens very, very slowly. Think of it almost as a sunrise. And so all of a sudden, there's a little bit more light, a little bit more light, a little bit more light, till all of a sudden you're at the noonday sun and you can't.
Eleanor!
That's funny. All right, sorry, 1 second. We love you all. We can hear what's going on, and you guys are wonderful. But all of a sudden, it's the noonday sun, and you can't even remember what it was like when it was dark. So I'm going to give you 10 ways to have your own amazing marriage. But I wanted you to think of, why are you doing these things? Is it out of fear or love? Now, fear can be a useful emotion, right? If you see a dark alley, it's dangerous, right? Fear is going to tell you, don't go down there, it's not safe. But it's not really a super useful emotion in marriage, because fear creates drama, blame, and selfishness. And when we show up in a state of fear, we're not our authentic self. Love, on the other hand, helps us to have compassion, helps us to be forgiving. And you understand that your value and his cannot change. So when trying these 10 tips, do your best to do it from a place of love and authenticity. All right, you ready? Tip number one, whatever you look for is what you'll find. Some of you might be familiar with this story, so if you are, just indulge me. But there's this family and they're looking for a new place to live. So they go into a new village and they see this wise man. And they say, what are the people like here? He goes, well, what were the people like in your last town? Oh my goodness, they were the worst. They complained, they bickered, they were always up in my business. He said, oh, you don't want to be here. Keep going on because these people are just the same. And then another family shows up. They're also looking for a new place to live. He talked to the same wise man. He said, what are the people like here? He asks them again, well, what were the people like in your last place? Oh, we loved them. We are so sad to have to leave them because they were kind, very inviting. It felt like family. We're heartbroken to leave them. So well, don't worry because the people in this town are exactly the same way. So whatever you look for in your husband, you will find it. Recently, last month, I did a 14 days of love challenge. And they were just simple things, something, a service oriented thing that you could do every day for your husband, like make his favorite dinner, make breakfast in bed, give him the night off, whatever it was. It was just something fun. And it was so awesome. I had an amazing experience, and so did my husband. But I started thinking that my husband was the greatest man that ever existed. And so I was driving one day and I was thinking about him like, oh, he's perfect. He's absolutely wonderful. And I thought, am I delusional? Am I really right in the head? So then I started thinking about all the things that make him less than perfect. And instantly I was annoyed and irritated with him. But here's the thing, he wasn't even in the car with me. Nothing had changed but my thinking. So I quickly went back to thinking more positive thoughts about him because I want to have this happy marriage with him. So if you want to see how terrible your husband is and you're going to look for those things, you're going to find it. But the opposite is very true. If you look for all the good things in him, you'll find those too. A fun idea when you're looking to change your mindset with that is to write down everyday things that you're grateful for about him. And this can be in your private journal. Every night, just write a sentence or two. Or you can make a gratitude list and give it to him. But then it starts changing your mindset and you're looking for the things that are great about him. All right, stop comparing your husband to other men. Can you imagine if your husband came home one day and looked at you up and down and just said, oh man, why can't you look like another woman? You would feel devastated. You would tell all your girlfriends he is the worst. And they would say, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. He is the worst. Did you realize that every time you can compare your husband to another man, he feels devastated? So if you say things like, why can't you be more like, and then insert anybody's name here, right? He always takes his wife on nice trips. He's always fixing things around the house. He always takes out the trash, right? And so on. You're just nagging your husband about how he should be like someone else. And no matter what he does, it will never be good enough. So just stop. Most likely, you're looking at somebody else's good traits and dismissing their faults, which is a good thing to do, right? But then with your husband, you're dismissing all the good traits and looking at his faults. Social media is also a breeding ground for comparison. Someone can post about something nice their husband did for them. And then you can think, well, my husband would never do that for me. Completely look past all the great things he does do for you and think how you got the short end of the stick when it comes to husbands. When I see people posting pictures of how their husband built something cool at their house or fixed an appliance, I could start comparing, but then I would look past all the great things he does do. So we have an 11-month-old baby who just barely started sleeping the night about a few weeks ago. And so for the 10 and a half months, my husband got up almost every single night with this baby, and he never complained about it. I can't imagine if I just dismissed that and said, well, but he didn't do what so-and-so's husband did, right? He did this and it was super awesome. And you know what else is way awesome about him? He buys clothes for me. If ever I'm wearing something, you're like, that's super cute, just assume he bought it for me. He knows way more stuff than I do about clothes. And he does such a fantastic job at finding my right size and stuff I really like. And so don't dismiss the awesome things your husband does for you. If you're stuck and you're having a hard time, then pull out your gratitude list from before, right? And remember all the great things he does. And if you need to, maybe take a social media break if you have a hard time to not compare your husband, especially if you're comparing your hard days to other people's. All right, number 3, only you can make yourself happy, sad, or mad, not your husband. As we grow older and hopefully become more mature, we start doing things for ourselves, right? And if you have children, you've watched them progress, right? All of a sudden they can put their own clothes on, brush their own teeth, do their own hair, to driving, right? Our skills just keep increasing. So why in the world would we give our emotions to somebody else and make them in charge of them? Now, some days are so much easier to find happiness than others, but happiness is always a choice. This is such great news because this means nobody can make you mad or sad. You always get to choose how you feel. And sometimes you may want to feel a negative emotion, and that's okay. But just know that you're choosing it. So take ownership of it. And know that you're choosing to feel irritated, frustrated, and that no one made you feel that way. All right, number 4, give up the manual for how your husband should behave. Anybody ever really read a manual? I read one time. I don't know why. I can't remember why I did it. And I read the whole thing, and it was long and boring. And I throw them out, right? When we have manuals for a husband, we're pretty much telling them, hey, you don't know the right way to behave or act or who you are. So let me just tell you because I know better, right? And I don't have faith in you to be yourself because you're just going to do it wrong. So let me just tell you how to do it. There are so many things wrong with this, right? The 2 biggest problems are, first, people don't like being told what to do. Now, before you argue with me and say, I know people who like to be told what to do, there is a difference between saying, hey, will you do, here's a list, check these items off the list, will you do this? And let me control your behavior and who you are. So some people do like to be told a honey-do list, those types of things, but not being controlled of who they are. The second one is when your husband does do what you tell him to do or say, he isn't coming from a place of authenticity. He has now become your husband robot. And husband robot might be fun for a minute, but it gets super boring eventually. So throw away the manual and just have your husband be himself. I know I do not like being told what to do. Not unsurprising, right? And my husband doesn't have a manual for me, so I'm not going to have one for him. And remember the golden rule here. Do unto others as you would have others do to you. All right, number 5, no expectations when you make a request. So a lot of times we're told, like, if you want to be happy in your marriage, just tell your husband what you need, right? And then you can expect them to do it, and then that will make me happy. That just sounds terrible because that means my happiness is completely based upon your actions. And I don't want that. I want the power of by myself to be happy or sad, right? So let me give you an example of requests without expectations. My husband loves tacos. He ridiculously loves them. And the funny thing is I actually enjoy cooking. And so I have my Traeger and I would make ribs and steaks and I would make fancy food. But whenever I ask him what he wants, he always requests tacos. But I don't really like tacos and I'm so sick of them. So even though I only really make them for special holidays for him or if he requested dinner, I will make them. But he knows that if I don't make tacos, it says nothing about how I feel about him. It doesn't affect whether or not I love him or anything like that. It's the same when you make a request of your husband and he doesn't do it. It says nothing about you if he loves you or values you. So I was requesting for my husband to take the trash out to the curb, right? I was making it mean when he didn't do it, that he saw me as less and he didn't love me. Honestly, he just forgot. He's so human, right? He forgets things. And sometimes people make requests of us and we don't even really want to do them. And it's okay. It doesn't mean we don't love them. And when we don't have expectations for somebody else and they do nice things for us, we get to just appreciate the nice thing they did for us. And when people feel appreciated, they usually want to do more nice things for you. All right, number 6 is rein in your crazy lady. I recently read a book called Wife for Life, and I highly recommend it. But in it, she talks about our 5 different crazy ladies. And so here are the 5. She says, crazy lady number 1, she acts out of fear of disappointment. Number 2, acts out of fear of being used. Number 3, she acts out of fear of losing her identity. Number 4, acts out of fear of inadequacy, exposure, intimacy, or of getting hurt. And the last crazy lady acts out of fear of abandonment. So I like to combine them all instead of separating them, just call them the crazy lady. So this is kind of when you have thoughts showing up that aren't the kindest. It's the crazy lady speaking in your head, right? Some of the ways she shows up is when you want to just discredit your husband's masculine nature, accuse him of not being loving or supportive enough, criticize him, berate him for not helping with the kids or specifications, discounts his attempts to please you, and seldom shows gratitude, and implies or flat out says that intimacy is not important. Those are just a handful of ways the crazy lady can show up. And when she does, here's the best advice: be quiet. Anything that comes out of your mouth when the crazy lady is running wild in your head is probably going to be mean or hurtful. So just be quiet until you can quiet your own crazy lady down, right? All right, number 7, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I always thought this was such funny advice. How am I supposed to grow together and become this amazing couple if we don't spend every waking moment that we can together, right? But according to Dr. Terry Orbuch's research on marriage and divorce, found that 29% of spouses said they didn't have enough privacy or time for self. According to Orbuch, when partners have their own set of interests, friends, and time for self, that makes them happier and less bored. Time alone gives partners time to process their thoughts, pursue their hobbies, and relax without responsibilities. John Aiken, a relationship psychologist and author, agrees. Couples need space in a relationship so they don't suffocate each other. Having time apart, it encourages each person to maintain their own sense of identity while still being a couple. And it fosters independence and strength rather than neediness and clinginess. So if your husband wants a guy's weekend, let him go. If you want a girl's weekend, then go, right? Now I know if you have young kids, sometimes getting a weekend away might be tricky. So pick up a hobby, right? Take it up an art class, sign up for a 5K, start a side gig, come and be on an awesome video, right? Film with your friends. Whatever it is, don't make excuses that you don't have enough time, because if it's important to you, you will find time for it. And as you support your husband's hobbies, he's more inclined to support yours. All right, number 8. Did you know that men need affection too? Even though men often show up as tough and strong, and we are bombarded with the notion that they have a one-track mind, they are human, and all humans need affection. It's not natural for a young boy to go from being nurtured and cared for by his mother to not have any affection in his marriage, right? And a recent study actually shows that men need just as much affection as women do. This can be so simple and fun, right? A back rub. Notice I didn't say feet rub because that grosses me out. But right, you can hold his hand or kiss him just because. Whatever, float your boat. All right, number 9. Always date your spouse. How did you get to know your spouse? How did you know that he was the one? I'm guessing that while you were deciding he was the one, you were dating, right? Dating is a fabulous time to really get to know the other person. You listen to their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and really got to know them. While dating, we were usually on our best behavior and tried really hard to look our best too. When you and your spouse continue to date, all the lovey-dovey feelings that you had while dating can still be a part of your marriage. Dating after marriage keeps the romance alive, lets the other one know that they're a priority in our very busy lives, and it's super fun. Even though when we get older, we start to look a little bit different, right? And if you've had babies, your body probably looks a lot different. But it's still fun to dress up and do our best to take care of ourselves physically. Now, some of you might be saying, well, my husband, he will never take me out, or I can't afford a babysitter, or I don't have enough money to go out on a date. Don't play the victim, right? Be creative. You can do different things. So ask him out on a date, right? And plan something he wants to do. Or if you don't have enough money for a babysitter and you don't have family nearby, create a babysitting swap, right? You take your friends' kids 1 week while they go out, and then the next week you can go out and they'll take your kids. If you don't have a lot of money, there are so many things you can do that are inexpensive or free. My cute sister-in-law, when they were first married, they actually would watch a sports event together for their date, and they would cheer for the opposing team. And that was their date, and it was so fun, and they loved it. So be creative. And number 10 is have fun. Now, hands down, my husband and I give the best white elephant gifts of all time. I am pretty sure that's true. One of our infamous gifts was a Christmas CD that we did of duets. We stayed up for hours recording our terrible voices over famous duets. We giggled our way through singing over Celine Dion, Andrea Bocelli, David Bowie, and Bing Crosby, and all sorts of other talented artists. We still reminisce how that was one of the funnest nights. Have fun in your marriage. Be silly, laugh often. I promise you, hard times are going to come. Find the humor in it. Humor makes all things bearable. So, as I told you these 10 ideas, did you see roadblock after roadblock in your mind? Did you think, well, of course you can do these things because your husband sounds amazing? My husband is amazing because that's what I choose to focus on, right? Just like I was telling you earlier, when I started focusing on his imperfections, I was annoyed and frustrated with him. But when I changed my mind and focused on his great qualities, I remembered all the wonderful things about him. And when you do all these wonderful, nice things, remember to not have expectations. This is my favorite quote from Shakespeare. Expectation is the root of all heartache. Did you catch that? Your expectations are the root of all your heartache. So you're going to just do these things because it feels good to be nice and loving towards someone else. I thought it would be fun to ask my husband for some suggestions and advice that he would give women from a man's point of view of some tips to have a happy marriage. So his very first one, and one that I've heard way too many times, was relax. Just his favorite advice. I'm really good at getting things done and go, go, go. And so just relax. And if you take on too many things, right, just slow down a little bit, relax. His next one was learn each other's love language. This was a book we read a long time ago, 5 Languages of Love. And we all receive and speak love in our own way. The ways are words of affirmation, touch, service, gifts, and time. He's a words of affirmation and I was touch. So he would say, I love you, and I would hug him, and we weren't speaking each other's language. So now he can say, I love you, and add a hug, and I can add a keep my hug and add an I love you, so that we're really speaking each other's love language. The next one was learn to be content, but be excited to grow. This one seems kind of self-explanatory, but be content with who you are and where you are in life, but don't allow that to make you become stagnant. You can still be at peace with your life and still try to be better yourself at the same time. Next one is be positive for goodness sakes. Did you know when you feel a negative emotion, your body and mind is trained to hone in and fix whatever the fear is, the negative emotion, right? But if we can switch it to the positive emotion, we're able to see possibilities and broaden our minds, and we actually can enhance our ability to develop skills and resources that we can use later in life. The next one is be grateful, because when we are grateful, we are positive. And what are we when we are positive? We are open to possibilities, right? And there are lots of ways you can do things to be grateful every night, and lots of gratitude practices. Right in your journal, there are lots of awesome things out there. This one is because my husband is a financial planner. Live within your husband's means. And so whatever, if he's the sole breadwinner, right? Live within your husband's means and respect him for what he does bring home and appreciate him. If you want to see your husband succeed financially, support him. And this advice still applies if both of you work. You can still live within the means even if you have double income, and you can be supportive of each other's efforts to help with the family finance. So all the tips he gave, the last and final one is my absolute favorite. Praise your husband every stinking day, and he will become your champion and slay dragons for you if you do. I have seen this. I've seen it in my own marriage, and I am now seeing it in the marriages of my clients that I coach. All of a sudden, a wife works on herself and starts improving. Her husband becomes her hero, and he's happy to fulfill his role as such. The last thing, we often create a list of what the things we want our husband to do. I want him to be more kind, more loving, more respectful. Instead of putting it on him, turn it around and realize that's the list for you. So instead of saying my husband can be more kind, turn it around and say I can be more kind to him. Instead of saying he needs to respect me more, turn it around, I need to respect him more. I challenge you to start implementing some of these things into your marriage and see what a difference they start to make. Too often, we want a magic pill that will just fix everything. But anything that is great took work and dedication. So dedicate yourself to your marriage and have the rocking marriage that most girls. Thank you guys so much.